David Walker joins us this fun Friday to give us the reasons why LaMelo Ball would stay in Charlotte. Plus, we'll answer your questions and talk about the Charlotte Hornets possibly trading back, if anything is indicated based on the recent players they've worked out this offseason. We'll talk about all of that today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's a fun Friday. We're live streaming. David Walker joining us at the end of the week. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available on any platform you so choose. That includes YouTube if you want to watch us, by the way. You can also like us on Facebook. We're on a quest for 1,000 Facebook likes. If we get there, Doug will dress as Grandmama for a show. If we get to 500, we're going to give you the Matt Geiger fact of the day, which was a fan favorite a couple of years ago. It's so good. And what's amazing about it is that there's so many facts of the day. And I don't know who it was on YouTube, but there was somebody saying, hey, you guys joke, like Matt Geiger was that guy. He dunked on Shaq. He was phenomenal. And I love that energy from our
quit
fans.
giving away facts. That was a fact right there. Right. See, you're giving away. We're never going to get to 500 if you keep giving away sweet Geiger facts. Hey, just real quick, I've been combing the sound effect library from our first adventure onto YouTube, which happened all the way back in like 2016, 2017. And I found this sound effect that we always used to start Fun Friday with. David will remember.
Oh, yeah. That's a party starter.
We are ready.
What that is.
2010s mixtape rap vibes to start the podcast. Exactly. I love it. All right. You can find us on Twitter at Walker Mail, at Doug Branson, LOH, David B. Walker, and the show handle on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. David texting us some topics, as he always does, before he comes on to the show. And the first one today was why LaMelo Ball will stay in Charlotte. What prompted this idea, David? Did you read some comments indicating otherwise? And what are some of the reasons you think he will stay in Charlotte?
Guys, these are comments IRL in real life. So out actually talking to people. I know, right? I got to tell you, I don't like it. I'm going back inside. So I'm going back online for the comments. But it just seems like to me, whenever the subject of LaMelo comes up, you know, the first thing that people say is, and Doug, you can attest to this because I think you were the originator. He's leaving. He won't be here for long. He's destined to go somewhere, a larger market, somewhere, greener pastures, what have you. And so I just wanted to bring it to the forum and talk to you guys about it. I think he's going to stick around. I think he's for Charlotte. I don't know. But I just think that it's more of emblematic of a sweeping change going across the NBA in my eyes. I mean, look at the finals, guys. Look at the teams that are in the finals. Look at the new pathway some of these younger players are taking. They're not teaming up. I mean, the team ups, the big threes, they're imploding. Look what's happening in Brooklyn. Look what's happening with the Lakers. The teams that are making it to the finals are kind of doing it by building within. Yes, they get the superstars, but feels like to me that's the new trend. It's not let's go play with your friends. It's let's build and let's build something here.
Doug, you want to answer that first as one of the, talking to you about having this conversation if LaMelo is going to leave? I'll let you respond first.
Well, he said I was the originator of that conversation. The originator of that conversation is just my fear that goes all the way back to Alonzo Mourning not wanting to stay in Charlotte and wanting to go to more hot colors and Miami Heat and all of that passion.
The heat is always
wanted
lurking.
to leave Charlotte.
The heat is always on. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, so that's my fear, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. We've seen bigger stars stay in smaller markets. Giannis kind of set some hope for me that the Hornets could convince LaMelo to stay, but it's not a given, and I would still put it at more than 50% that he will not finish his honestly vastly more than 50% that he won't finish his career as a Charlotte Hornet. But it starts with this coaching hire. Every piece of talent that they bring in needs to complement LaMelo Ball in some way. They've got something here. And they here's the thing. The Hornets could do all of the right things and even compete for an Eastern Conference championship or a finals. And LaMelo still decide to leave. because there are more fun markets and cooler places to play and more opportunities for him in other markets. So, but the Hornets have to do everything they can to at least make that argument.
Yeah, I can't look. We're going to get to some comments later on. I wonder what the comments are looking like now. I wonder what they're going to look like after people watch this, say, too late. LaMelo's already gone. There's no chance that they could save him. Look, man, he might leave. That might happen in the future. You wanted to talk about some of the super teams, David. You look at Boston, you look at Golden State. I will say Boston is a bigger market. Those guys did have success pretty immediately. So Jason Tatum being a part of an Eastern Conference Finals, playing in a Game 7 against LeBron right away, winning right away is going to help. Exactly what happened with Golden State. It took a little while for Steph Curry to cook into a superstar. And then as it happens, oh, okay, the Warriors are just going to go all the way to the finals and win a title after the Mark Jackson era. Steve Kerr steps in, boom, title right away, 73-win season. It's tough to leave that type of success. Milwaukee probably is the best example because they did have to go through their growing pains. They did have to find pieces to add, and they underwent what I thought was a pretty big mistake in letting Malcolm Brogdon go because Milwaukee didn't want to go into the luxury tax. I thought that was egregious. Like, look, that's exactly why you go into the luxury tax to bring in a Malcolm Brogdon still, because he was a 50, 40, 90 guy that they just decided to let go. But at least they made up for it going after Jrue Holiday, giving up quite a bit of picks to try to right those wrongs. And eventually Giannis continues to grow and win a championship. That's in Milwaukee. That's probably the best comparison we can get. So does LaMelo and the roster around him, with right decisions being, fingers crossed, hopefully made, can you have that same type of trajectory? Ultimately, it all comes down to winning in that city that keeps you in that city, regardless of whether it's a mid-market, whether it's a big market, whatever. That is what has to be taken care of. And all of this talk about LaMelo leaving, that's more so from fans saying, kind of projecting on him, right? Like LaMelo's able to build his brand here. Exactly. There are commercials in the NBA Finals with LaMelo right now, and he's a Charlotte Hornet. So he's able to build his brand. Everybody else can project, and that's fine. LaMelo hasn't said anything that he wants to leave Charlotte. The dude just likes to hoop, and he can hoop in Charlotte, and hopefully we can win to keep him here in this city.
Yeah, I mean, of course, at the end of the day, it comes down to winning. It comes down to what this team puts around him, a coaching standpoint, and certainly the roster as well, and the success that they have. I think, to your point, that was one of the things I wanted to bring up as well. It's like the marketing dollars and the larger market year round. Like, to me, that's not as big a factor at all. He's got the LA ties already. Half the league lives in LA in the offseason anyway. So he could do that. The commercials are already there. They're only going to keep coming as the winning increases. So to me, that's not even a factor, but that seems to be one of the issues that people think. He's flashy, right? He wants, but like, the cameras are already there. He's been on camera since he was in middle school with the Facebook show. So they've had the access and they've had the voice out there. And so I think obviously it comes down to the winning, but I think it's attractive to LaMelo to say, hey, this could be my franchise. I mean, really, like, Kemba is the face of the franchise, I guess, if you want to go back historically to this new version of it. But LaMelo's right there already, and already, right? So like that, there's not a lot of places you can go and have that. Certainly not the Lakers, certainly not some of these larger market franchises. So I think that's going to be something for him to look at too. But yeah, the winning's got to come. They've got to be able to build around him. That starts with the hire, starts with what they put around him on the roster. But all the pieces are there for him to really carve out his own niche and do what he wants to do here in Charlotte.
It's why you need to make that jump from being the fun team everybody across the country loves to watch on NBA League Pass into, okay, now we want to watch them because they're fun and they're winning basketball games. And I think they could make some noise in the postseason, because right now, and I don't even blame many people for this, but right now they're still kind of viewed as a dumping ground for everybody's garbage to some degree, right? And not to call Russell Westbrook garbage by any means. He's one of the best players ever, but that contract isn't good. And yet I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast. It was him and Kevin O'Connor giving you a reaction to the most recent NBA Finals game. They were working out Utah Jazz trades too, as they were getting deeper into the content. And that allowed them to talk about the Nets, what they might do, whatever. Basically, the trade was Kyrie Irving to LA, Russell Westbrook to Charlotte, Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward to the Nets organization, where clearly the main topic points are Brooklyn and LA, and Charlotte will just take Russell Westbrook. And so the only reason that would make sense is if you move off of Russell, so we don't take the basketball out of the hands of the dude that's already top 5 face of the franchise just 2 years into the league. That seems like a pretty bad idea if you want to keep him. Oh, I know. Let's bring in Russell Westbrook and put him alongside LaMelo Ball and see if those guys will work out on the floor together.
Yeah, I think Kevin O'Connor had pieced that together based on some of the noise that the Hornets might be interested in doing that, adding that Westbrook piece, that had been floated out there. We've seen it in various sources. And the only reason that would really make sense, right, is to move off of Gordon. I mean, that would be the big piece.
Well, and Terry, right? So if you, depending on how you view Terry, if you're trying to allocate that money elsewhere, you get off of those contracts. But if Russell plays, then it's you don't have another year to work with before, all right, now we're going to start winning. That's the thing that makes that trade hard. Maybe last year that makes a lot more sense, but not this year.
And there was also noise around that like, hey, wherever Russell went, he would just be bought out. Like there was something about that. I guess that's still a possibility, but it seems like I don't know if that would end up being what would happen, but I guess you could go that route. But that seems like a lot of moving pieces, and that seems like a big swing to take, bringing in Westbrook. I mean, we've talked about the pluses and minuses of having Russell Westbrook here for 2 years. So we don't need to rehash that. But I mean, the Hayward piece and trying to really restructure this roster, I guess, would be what they would be looking for.
I feel like LaMelo is certainly. It's not a guarantee that he would go somewhere else, and I think there are stars that you draft and go, there's probably no convincing this player. I don't feel that way about LaMelo, but the onus now is on the organization to find him, a big rotation that can actually make the playoffs, and to start slowly and to keep helping him to become the player that he wants to be. You can't do it on your own. I don't care how great you are. Michael Jordan had a lot of great talent around him and had some say-so as his star power grew, had some say-so in terms of how that roster was built. So I think it's just all a process. It's going to take time. I want to get to some of this chat action and help lead us into this next segment. This is from Slat. Slat says, LaMelo fans want him to stay. You guys have never won anything. Well, listen. I coached a 5-year-old basketball team to a championship. I got the ball to prove it. They all signed it. I made them. So yeah, I've won something. The Hornets may not have won anything, but I've won something. It's anyway. He continues. If he's the first to bring a championship to the Hornets, he'll be the only person you guys remember. So there's some backhanded insult there, but he does bring up a good point, which is that you can be a legend in Charlotte very easily. It's much more difficult,
Which is
as LeBron James is finding out, it's much more difficult to go somewhere else where there's already a lot of legendary people and make your case that you also deserve a statue outside of the arena. Danny on the chat says, I've never heard anything about Ja leaving Memphis. I think the narrative of LaMelo leaving is unfounded and is based on assumption, much like people assumed he'd be high maintenance.
Well, look, it's LA stuff, man. That's what it is. It's people projecting, and it's the LA connection because he's already been a star. And then when you think star, you don't think they can live in the city of Charlotte. You think they can live with the Lakers. Look, ultimately, what it comes down to is what we've talked about a lot, winning. And if you want to project that the Charlotte Hornets aren't going to make the right decisions in order for that to happen, that's okay. You have some evidence to work with. If you don't think Mitch Kupchak has done a good job, it's not unfathomable. You might think that there were some bad contracts in place. You might think that the Hornets as a general franchise haven't made the right decisions. Therefore, future is going to be predicated on what they've done in the past. And then LaMelo might leave because we haven't had success because, quote, we haven't won anything. Like, I feel like B Rabbit and 8 Mile already putting out the insults that I know are coming. Like, duh. Yeah. That's fine. Like, you can talk about the Charlotte franchise not having won anything. You're damn right. Like, this is something we know. And so we understand that this franchise has to do the things in order to keep LaMelo. And so that's ultimately what it comes down to before LaMelo just is so hell-bent on going back to LA.
Yes, because the chatter will calm down once the Hornets start to compete, once they start to achieve things alongside LaMelo also continuing to hit those milestones. I think part of the reason why there hasn't been a lot of chatter about Ja is because Ja is turning Memphis into a contender.
And he's from South Carolina, man.
But Memphis, too. My point is Memphis is also turning Memphis into a contender. They're making great decisions and putting great pieces around Ja via the draft and via free agency. So, that's what the Hornets, that's where the onus has to be.
Right, exactly. I mean, Trae Young's another example, right? Some early playoff success. You don't hear much about them moving off of Trae Young. You just don't like the Zion thing. You've heard he wanted to leave there since the day he got there. It'll be interesting to see whatever happens with him. But yeah, I mean, they've obviously got to win. They've obviously got to do the right things. And then I think you're right, Walker, the assumption that he would just want to leave when things are going well, just to be in another place, just to be in another market, I think it's a little unfounded and a little unfair. And you're not really paying attention to LaMelo, I don't think, if you see that. If you see him playing, you see the stuff he says off the court and his interviews and stuff like that, how much he just wants to play. It seems like a kid who really wants to build something.
LaMelo stayed here in Charlotte last offseason to work on his game. Look, doesn't mean that he doesn't love LA. I think when he was talking in his exit interviews, there was a question about his offseason plans. I think he talked about, setting some time aside for his family and normal stuff like that. I don't know if he was specific on staying in Charlotte. I know it was open. So, yeah, we'll see exactly what takes place and what the future is going to. Oh, do we have some news? Is it the news, Doug?
I found by the way, I went to the archive. I found the breaking news sound effect too.
Okay.
Breaking news. Are you ready for this breaking news, fellas?
I am very ready. Let's hear it.
The Charlotte Hornets will be working out Mark Williams for their second NBA draft workout. So no,
that wasn't gonna
it's not the news. But here's the thing.
Okay.
So the first workout today, they're going to do 3 workouts today. First workout. Let me just run down the list, and this matters because we've got sound bites from one of the participants, Max Christie, RJ Cole, Grant Golden, Alex Hunter, Ishmael Kamagate, and Gui Santos. Okay, a lot of names there. Second workout, it's only one name that I see here from the Charlotte Hornets, Mark Williams. Little solo workout.
The only name listed, the only one. This
tells you all you need to know.
I could be mistaken on this. Some of these workouts don't go reported, so they're private. They are unbeknownst to the public. This one obviously is, with this being tweeted out. Who knows if there's another one on the horizon, because we got later confirmation last year that Kai Jones had multiple workouts with the Hornets, and then eventually they like him so much they trade up with the New York Knicks to go get him in the first round.
I love little secret workouts, sneaking him in the back door. Love it.
Yeah, well, they got Mark Williams. It's publicized this time. I mentioned, it's noteworthy. Not the news, but it is noteworthy. All right. We've ran over. Let's go to the next segment coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Speaking of draft workouts, I got a chance to talk with Max Christie earlier today. He was a part of the list of workouts that had a few different draft prospects working out at Spectrum Center. Max Christie, interesting guy. Well, we'll play you some of that sound here in just a moment. Not before we talk about Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Do these workouts indicate the Charlotte Hornets might trade back in the first round? We'll talk about that next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
I got a couple of rookies here. I got David spreading fake news.
Guess what? 4 championship games in a row. Continued success, sustainability.
I've got Steve Bob not plugging in his headphones.
Which I would love to see JaVale McGee, get out there on the ice velodrome or whatever you call those things.
This is a professional show we're trying to run here.
Only on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Interesting breaking news coming out from the Charlotte Hornets. Mark Williams, a guy that has been tabbed to the Charlotte Hornets a million times. You like that? I got to wait for the beat drop. Mark Williams been mocked to the Hornets at 13, at 15. There's a need for a big guy. Well, we have Max Christie sound. Like, we don't have Mark Williams sound. That's going to have to come on Monday, but we'll have Max Christie sound too, right?
Before we get to that, I think there's a great question that I wanted to give some time to, and I knew we had to get to break, and it goes off of our previous discussion. This from the YouTube chat. Amber asks, does LaMelo have a draw for free agents? Is there anyone that wants to run with LaMelo? So the question is, is LaMelo a free agent draw now? And will he be in the future?
Yeah, I think it only helps. Ultimately, it's going to come down to the cash and the chance to win, which we've talked about a couple of times now. But if there is similar money on the table and you aren't going to go play for what you would deem a contender, it's two teams, whatever you think is in Charlotte's neighborhood. Charlotte is a young, potential to grow type of team where you're going to get the basketball if you play alongside LaMelo. Like, I have to imagine that is going to be something attractive for free agents.
Yeah, it's a guard-dominated league. Point guards run this show, and he's making everybody out there look good. He made Mason Plumlee look pretty good at times, guys. Right? So, like, there's a lot of benefit and upside to play with LaMelo for sure.
That's the point. The point is that LaMelo is a fun player to play with, and people notice. There have been all kinds of tweets these past 2 seasons, eyeball emojis from players. Now, does that mean that they are going to all of a sudden come to Charlotte because of that? No, but it means that other players out there notice how fun LaMelo is to watch and how fun he could be to play with because he's such an unselfish and great facilitator. I don't know that his name is like going to draw people in immediately. It's not one of those he's going to get there. That's the journey. The journey is he will become a player that it's like, yes, I got to go play with LaMelo. But certainly he's a selling point.
All right. One of the draft prospects that worked out for the Hornets today, and Max Christie, talked about playing alongside fellow Spartan Miles Bridges and the possibility of that happening. That would be a lot of fun for him, but also just individually, right? Not necessarily putting that connection to Miles Bridges. Pretty interesting prospect. He was just a one-year player at Michigan State. The efficiency numbers, they weren't good, but also you can see the game there. You can see the type of athlete, the versatility. I think he moves really well. Good cutter. I think there's a lot to work with, and I think he is a good defender. Here he is talking about the advice he received, whether he should stay in the draft after what was not a sensational year with Michigan State, and the advice that led him to make that final decision.
Feedback that I got from NBA teams just sort of helped me reinforce that decision. And then having my close circle, like my family and coaches that I've been with for a while, sort of reinforcing that decision to stay in was probably one of the biggest reasons that I did. And so I don't think I was really pressed for time. I thought I took my time. And I thought I did a pretty good job of making, a good decision.
Yeah, I think Max Christie is a guy that really could have benefited from going back to Michigan State and then, having those efficiency numbers go up. I think he could be a lottery pick next year, but decides to stay here because he was getting a lot of good feedback from people in the higher ups making these decisions. And ultimately, you're going to get money if you're getting the feedback saying, hey, we like you. We're going to take you here. Maybe, I don't know if he's promised a spot, but if you're getting positive feedback, certainly understandable that you're going to stay here as a potential first-round pick. And I think the shooting can translate, even if he wasn't a good shooter based off of the numbers. Like, I like the mechanics. I think this is somebody that has that a part of his game. And here he is talking about how the workouts have gone for him with some of these other teams, including the Charlotte Hornets.
I think I've shot it really well in these workouts. That's one of the biggest feedbacks that I've gotten is even though I didn't necessarily shoot it great at Michigan State, I don't think that was an accurate representation of how I can shoot the ball. And so coming into these workouts, I've been able to shoot it really well. And I think my decision-making and just my instincts have been very well as well. And so I think that's some of my strengths, especially in these workouts. And then things to work on. I think one of the biggest things for me is just getting bigger and stronger. But I think that'll just come with time and age. I'm only 19. And so I'm not necessarily worried about that. I think I've done everything that I can on that front to sort of put as much muscle as I can on my frame.
I like Max Christie as a prospect. I think he's pretty good, but he's in that land where they're not going to take him at 15 and they're not going to get to him at 45. He's going to be gone by that point. I would think so. That would be a fall. That'd be a slide that I don't think is going to happen. The shooting and the workouts that have gone well for him, that reminds me of James Bouknight. right? Didn't shoot necessarily all that well at UConn, but did shoot really well in workouts, and that was all everybody was talking about. Here's my point, though. Going to that range of falling like 25, Doug, if anybody is allowed to do that on this podcast, I need to make sure I get to make sure I get everything out on this before you take it and then run away with the microphone. What I was going to ask you was, do these workouts indicate that the Hornets might trade back because these players are kind of in that range from 20 to 40 where the Hornets aren't picking? So does it maybe hint that the Charlotte Hornets might be moving in that area?
I certainly think so. I think Mark Williams, to my knowledge, is one of the only players they've worked out so far, they will work out, that has even been in that 13, 15 range. I'm trying to think
Abaji,
Abaji, yeah, okay.
And Eason maybe, depending on what you think about him.
Right. So, they haven't worked out many. What I think, and this is total, I'll play it. I'll play the speculation music. It's total speculation.
A reluctant go-to.
Okay, I'm going to stop it early. So here's my speculation that I think they're sure about one pick, and I think they are trying to move the second pick. Now, which pick that is, I don't know, because I think you can still get Mark Williams at 15. A lot of people have noted Cleveland doesn't necessarily want someone at 14. So if you're, you gotta kind of gauge it, see if anyone's going to trade into that spot. You could take a risk, but I think there are multiple players that they would be happy with, whether it's Abaji or Eason or Mark Williams. If they're super sure, they can try to take Mark Williams at 13 and then move to 15. If they're less sure on Mark and they think, hey, we're gonna have one of those players at 15, and they can move the 13th pick. I just think one's going, one's staying.
Yeah, my fear with that is if they have a guy, which I hope they do, you go through some of this and pre-draft stuff. If they have their guy, I would say get him at 13. And if he's not going to fall too much further, I think you're right. Like as y'all were talking about it in the mock draft, you don't feel like Cleveland would probably grab him if he fell. If Mark Williams was there at 13, it'd probably feel pretty good about being there at 15. I just wouldn't want to overthink it at this point. I'm not a proponent of overthinking at all, especially when it comes to the draft. As you guys know, it can be tricky. But I think if you want to go ahead and get him, you don't risk it too much there, unless there's a couple guys. I don't know. Past the big guys, Walker Kessler didn't get a shining review on recent shows here. So I don't know that they're looking at him, but Mark Williams seems like the consensus no-brainer. So
the thing is, because it's that position, you can't play with it again.
Exactly, yeah.
If this was a guard or a forward, okay, maybe you play your cards and say, well, there's no way Cleveland takes or whatever team takes that because they're so deep at that spot. But you can't play with it because if somebody trades into 14 to take that guy and you had the chance and you didn't do it, you can't take that risk. Not again.
Exactly. You can't. Yeah, if there was a group of them, and you felt comfortable grabbing one or two or whomever or wing. But yeah, you're right. Not with the center position. Not now. Not on this roster. Not with no other moves on the horizon, right?
But it's great to see the organization doing their due diligence and understanding, hey, if we do have it's not a guarantee. You got to, it takes two to tango, got to get another team to get involved there. But if the opportunity presents itself, I feel pretty confident, just based on Mitch Kupchak's recent history in the draft, they're going to be prepared. And some of the hits that he's had in the second round, it seems like this particular scouting staff and Mitch Kupchak, they do their homework. I'm not sure you could say the same thing about the previous regime. Friend of the show, Rich Joe, we loved him, came on, did Food versus Prospect, but I just don't think that regime was as fully prepared as Mitch Kupchak is. So I feel good about that. I do have a question here on the chat that goes along with this. This is from Blake. If for some reason Duren falls to 13, would you consider double dipping and taking Mark Williams at 15?
I would not. I don't want to do that because you don't want to, because then it's Kai Jones too. And again, the versatility there you're talking about, we just don't know exactly what's going to take place with Kai Jones, even if he's not your typical drop back guy. But at the same time, I would rather use my pick on Jalen Duren and then use the other one for a guy that also is going to help you out on the wing, Malachi Branham, whoever would be there. But if you get both of these guys, then you're making sure that one of them isn't going to play now, and you're probably picking one of these guys for the future. So you're pigeonholing one of these players you pick as a perennial backup, I just don't like that way of thinking.
I want the new Twin Towers. Okay, Walker, we're starting a new regime here in Charlotte. I would be all in for doubling down. They've done it before, and it has not worked. But I mean, you take two swings at this thing with two lottery guys. I think that's a little bit different than doing.
It's better than one swing. Two swings.
Two swings. Right.
What about at 45? Maybe a big guy, a 7-footer, falls down over there.
You know what's better than two swings?
Kessler,
3 swings.
Probably, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kind of with David on this. I feel like if those are BPA, baby. I mean, if Duren and Mark Williams end up being the best players available at 13 and 15, then you do it. You don't even worry about Kai Jones. Look, the best player will eventually rise. All of this is, I really mean this. All of these draft picks are just swings. They're cracks at it. You really have no guarantees, because you can look at all of the combine stats. You can look at the physical tools, and it's so tough to judge two things. One, someone's mentality, their want to. Do they pass the want to test? Do they want to be great? Are they going to do the things necessary to get more playing time, fight their way through what will be, camp battles and different things? And when they get that opportunity, when it usually comes from injury, will they step up and play well? And the other thing you can't figure out is injury. You can't judge. I mean, you can have some intel if they've been injured before, but you never know how that's going to work out. So you take some cracks at it. That's what I said.
Yeah. The one downside that you're scared of is, like, it's not exactly the wave of the NBA to be adding tons and tons of big guys that maybe can't move that well or switch off.
We're zagging. You guys are zigging. Exactly. We're zagging.
Or
this is how we win.
We're countering Cleveland. I mean, my God, they're stacking them up there. So you got to have somebody to come in. I mean,
well, the other thing too is, like, Duren and Mark Williams are different kinds of defenders. So, they at least have some differences in tool sets slightly. I mean, so it's not like they're the exact same player.
But they're enough of the same player where you're not playing them on the floor at the same time by any means.
Can you imagine that?
But can you imagine?
Here's the thing with both of these guys. I kind of want to talk about the coaching. Who is going to be that guy, whether it be Kenny Atkinson or Mike D'Antoni. Kenny Atkinson, he put forth the drop coverage with the Nets when Jarrett Allen was a part of that organization. Mm-hmm. And so Mark Williams being that pick would allow that defensive identity to come about for a Kenny Atkinson, and he would get some real playing time as long as, especially if you're not going after anybody in free agency that has that ability. I think Mark Williams would be a good fit there. I don't know about Mark Williams maybe playing that Clint Capella role with Mike D'Antoni coming in as that head coach. So, those are some kind of examples you can look at. I do think with the switching philosophy that has been used before under D'Antoni, that's going to be tough with Williams. I mean, in fact, it's impossible with Williams. And so Jalen fits that a little more so where you can get away with it. Uber athlete is Jalen, and Mark's a pretty good one too. I guess my point though is, like, these guys can fit with either one of these coaches, and it would help them out because it's going to help the team out, and it kind of helps their philosophies out too, based on the success we've seen from each of these coaches with their previous teams. So that would be nice to see. But only draft one. Don't draft both of them. Just get one, and then try to use that other.
Why get one when you could get two?
The other thing too is, like, how do you maximize the development of one when, all right, now we have some minutes to go to this guy that we really like. Okay, Jalen, it's your turn. Okay, Mark, now it's your turn. Where we could just be giving all of that time, maximizing the development to one player rather than trying to divide it and say, oh, all right, we're kind of favoring Jalen. Sorry, Mark, you're going to move to the bench and here, but you can go to the Greensboro Swarm and play and eventually fall out of favor. Like, if you wanted to use it as trade bait, fine. But yeah,
I'll give you one more argument why taking both would make sense. Just in the here's a macro argument. Okay, these players are pretty rare. These types of players, and when you find one in the draft, it can give you, it's like, it just reminds me of my fantasy league. Don't even get me started on my fantasy football league.
Yes.
But they still allow tight ends in my fantasy football league, okay? Which I think is ridiculous. There's like 3 or 4 tight ends right now. There's like 3 or 4 tight ends right now that actually legitimately give you points. And so the teams that have those tight ends that consistently produce points, they're so rare within the league these days that they have a huge advantage. That's why I say turn the tight end spot to a flex spot or another wide receiver spot. If you want to put a tight end there, fine, turn it into kind of a wide receiver tight end split. Anyway, why that matters to my discussion here is that these players are rare, and when you find them in the draft and you can keep them for several years on a pretty reasonable dollar amount, that's a huge advantage for your organization. And if you get 2 cracks at it, I think you take that, because otherwise you have to do what the Hornets might have to do this season or next season, which is go out and find that in free agency or trade, and you're going to be paying premium dollars.
I like the idea of this becoming I can't hear you. I don't know what you're saying. Probably some kind of nonsense. Do you want to get to some comments before we move on to the next segment, Doug?
The next segment is going to be comments and questions. So I say we just.
Hey, one quick thing to keep in mind, though. This team's not afraid to draft players that they haven't brought in for workouts, right? Like we've seen that in the past.
Totally.
So who knows?
Yeah, and some of that is just the players controlling that, and that's something Mitch has talked about before. But you're right. I mean,
no one wants to work out here.
Until they get that new practice facility.
Well, what's even more hilarious is the fact that some of the players they did work out before the deadline took place, like a Terquavion Smith, who was rising up draft boards. Nah, as soon as he works out with the Hornets, out, I'm going back to college. That happened 2 other times. So the joke was like, as soon as they work out with the Hornets, they're going back to school. They're not dealing with all that BS. Now you can't. Now the deadline's in place. So you have to deal with your workout, and you have to stay in the NBA draft. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. We're going to get to all of your questions. We're going to get to all of your comments regarding the draft, regarding Mark Williams, LaMelo Ball, whatever you want to write in there into the chat, or maybe we have some Hive Live questions left over. We'll get to all of that coming up in just a moment. Feeling your best starts with what you eat. Sakara helps you live a healthy, balanced lifestyle and truly enjoy it with delicious, plant-rich, transformational nutrition that builds a foundation for living in your best body. Now is the time to seek wellness, joy, and abundance in all areas of your life, starting with what you eat. With Sakara, you get nutrient-dense meals, snacks, supplements that nourish your body, all of that without ever sacrificing taste or quality. True radiance starts on your plate, made with high-quality, organic ingredients. Sakara's plant-rich, transformational nutrition programs are expertly designed to deliver real results, from reduced bloat and eased digestion to clear skin and boosted energy and moods. Again, all without sacrificing taste or quality. It's great stuff. Right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/lockedon20, or you can enter code lockedon20 at checkout. It doesn't matter. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/lockedon20 to get 20% off of your first order. Sakara.com/lockedon20. Comments coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
So wait a minute. Do we value players that forget plays all of a sudden? I thought we loved LeBron James because he remembered he could cite to you every single play from every game he's ever played in. Now all of a sudden we like players who have no idea what happened on the previous play.
I don't think you want them to play scared, right?
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
All right, Doug. Hopefully you've been scrolling. I don't know if you wanted to save the scrolling before we actually get to the comments, but how many do we have and which ones do you want to get to first?
I'm scrolling Twitter right now. I'm on Woj. I'm on Shams. I'm waiting for this head coaching announcement that I was just sure was going to happen during our show. We kind of went later on the live to see if we could suss it out. They were trying to do a little Friday news dump. I hope they don't. I hope the Hornets announce their head coach not on a Friday.
No reason to, really.
Attention. Yeah, like you want to be proud of it, right?
Unless it just is the natural timeline in which you want to make your decision, and that fine. But at the same time, there's nothing to hide here. In fact, this is when you want to boost. Hey, the new coach, new coach, new life. We're gonna make the playoffs. It's something to celebrate more than it is to hide.
New year, new me. Rod Boone of the Charlotte Observer confirming on Twitter that this is an individual workout for Mark Williams. Speaking of the head coaching situation, we do have a question here from Edgar on YouTube saying, if we hire Mike D'Antoni, he wants to know if we agree with this. If we hire Mike D'Antoni, it'll be announced within 2 to 3 days. But if we hire Kenny Atkinson, it's going to be announced after the finals. Do you agree with that logic?
I mean, I could happen that way. I don't think that's the way they're playing it. I mean, Mike Brown's already been hired by the Kings. We've seen coaches be hired by teams that went on to win the championship before. So I get the kind of thinking there. I think you guys hit on this yesterday, but I don't think that's the card they're playing right now. If they've got their guy, I think they go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense. But you mentioned the Kings hiring Mike Brown before it was all said and done. And so we see this happen in other sports where coaches will be going through the playoffs and they're announced as a head coach and they'll still stick around. In some instances, it kind of varies. I don't think that should be a telltale sign that it's going to be Mike D'Antoni or it's going to be Kenny Atkinson.
Yeah, I mean, maybe unless he was like, listen, guys, let's keep this under wraps until we wrap up the finals or something. I mean, I guess that could happen, but I don't think that's the way they're necessarily playing it.
Yeah, I wonder if the finals are different than the Mike Brown situation because, I don't know if the NBA would love having those kind of announcements during.
NBA's got their own problems right now, Doug. They've got a lot going on.
What you want to talk about, and I would love to just rapid fire go through those when we get through a few more questions. But so to answer Edgar's question, I'm not going to read too much into the timing of the situation. So if we don't hear about D'Antoni in the next 2 or 3 days, I'm not going to read into it. It's just like what happened with Kenny getting the first interview, and everyone on social media and Twitter was like, well, I guess Kenny's the hire. And it's like, no, just give it a second. I mean, they're going through this process. They've been very patient. Michael Jordan took a vacation. He was like, I'm going to be patient with this
for a couple of weeks, guys. Now, I mean, listen, I guess it did make sense that they were coming east. Right. They kind of scheduled that interview after they left San Francisco, coming into Boston. He could just swoop down here and see MJ on the way back up to Boston.
Makes sense.
Made sense.
Play that.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions to our Twitter account. Remember, if you think of a Hornets question at any point, you can tweet us at @LockedOnHornets with the hashtag HiveLive, and we will throw it onto the screen just like this. Z-Bird. If we hire D'Antoni, is the Westbrook trade more interesting or less interesting?
It's all the same. I mean, it's bad either way. I don't care what coach is. I mean, I don't want Russell Westbrook, whether it be D'Antoni, whether it be Kenny Atkinson. Yeah, like
you're the LeBron cigarette in the ear meme.
Although it would be awesome to hear about D'Antoni going into the interviews with like this newfound dual point guard system he would put in with Westbrook and LaMelo, and how they would just go flying up and down the court. I hope he didn't do that, but no.
Yeah, and I get Russell Westbrook played for D'Antoni with the Rockets, just for that little bit. I get the question. I just, different situation. That offense, you don't want LaMelo to be James Harden in this offense. I want him to have the basketball in his hands all the time. I don't want him to, to continue to run this ISO heavy stuff like LaMelo's great by making other players great frequently, and you have other players to, try to emphasize. So, either way, I don't like it.
I don't care if it's D'Antoni, macaroni, rigatoni. Don't give me Westbrook. That's what you're saying.
That's correct. Either pasta, whatever. I don't want it.
Okay, I'm going to cut back to us because I had a question submitted by a friend of the show, Suman. And Suman wants to know, we've all been ranking the potential coaches for this team for next season, but how would you guys rank the previous coaches of the Horncats era? Oh. Is Clifford number one since he brought us to the playoffs twice? Is Dunlap dead last? How are you ranking the coaches?
Go ahead, David.
Man, yeah, I was starting from the bottom here. Was it Sam Vincent?
That was not a good Bobcats run.
You got to go Dunlap. I think you got to go Dunlap, though, since it was just so out of the blue. And it did not go well.
In one season.
At the bottom. Yeah. I would still put Clifford at the top, I think. Although I love a lot of the stuff JB did. Clifford was just solid.
Yeah, I'd put Steve Clifford number one with the success they get to the playoffs. Plus, you have a 7-game series against the Miami Heat.
Are we not counting the previous Hornets era?
That I wasn't because the Hornets, right?
The Hornets, right?
Yeah. So I guess
Okay.
I'm not going like Dave Cowens, or Paul. I mean, well, I guess Paul Silas, right?
Paul
Silas fits in
both
any
trades.
era. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah, he does. That's totally true. I think Steve Clifford probably still number one.
Yeah, I
and
think it's
Dunlap last.
Yeah, it's Clifford, then Brown, then
Oh yeah.
it gets tough. It's like, I mean, maybe you give Silas third just out of pity. Like he should not have been given that team. That was not fair to Paul Silas.
No.
But probably Borrego third after that, then Silas, then Bickerstaff, then Vincent, then Dunlap. That would be my. Now, okay, who, are you putting Cowens? Are you putting Bristow over Clifford? If we do work,
No.
if you're putting Silas over Clifford,
I don't think I'm putting Bristow over Clifford. I don't think.
Cowens,
Well,
yes, over
what's
Clifford.
Cowens has to be right.
A lot of success under Cowens. Yeah, a lot of solid playoff teams under Cowens. So probably Cowens would be up there for me.
Well, so Bristow, from what I have here, at 207 and 203 record. Dave Cowens went 109 and 70.
Mm-hmm.
Silas went 161, 120. Cowens and Silas are probably ahead of Clifford.
It's 1-2 there, and you have to look at playoffs because Silas had the better playoffs record. Cowens was 4-8 in the playoffs. Silas was 11
going against
12.
Jordan, and did have the Celtics
Tough
series
draw.
win. Yeah,
Always a tough draw.
draw.
That's why I think I've said this on the show before. I was not a fan of Michael Jordan growing up because he always used to crush the Hornets and break my heart. I didn't become a fan of Michael Jordan until I attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and really embraced all of the history and the love for him. And I got over the Bobcats. Honestly, the Bobcats cured me a lot of my hate that I had for Ray Allen, for Michael Jordan, for all of these people that hurt the Hornets along the way.
Yeah.
Jason Kidd.
Who do you mean? Who do you mean besides
the
Ray
Bucks,
Allen?
that Bucks series.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense. I'm sorry. That was tough. No, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Bucks series, Ray Allen. Some of the other villains of that era would have been Jordan, would have been Jason Kidd. The latter part of that era, the Nets ended the Hornets a few times.
Well, didn't the Knicks beat the Hornets during their championship?
Yeah,
run?
Allen Houston. Oh my God. I hated Allen Houston.
Yeah.
Well, and I was even talking about Patrick Ewing. I think the Hornets lost that year they went there, but yeah.
Oh yeah, they did. Oakley, Ewing. Yeah.
But Allen Houston, I feel like I don't know why. Just felt like he ended the Hornets even more than Patrick
I think
Ewing
Knicks
did.
fans would grow to hate Allen Houston too after that contract. So you're not
Larry
alone.
Johnson. Kind of a little dual situation there.
Well, yeah, went to
Good
the
question
finals.
though. Good question. We don't think about the guys on the bench that much, especially going back. So that was a good one.
Okay, I'm scrolling. Oh, I do have one more. I got to get it up on the old tag board producer screen here. Okay, this is from R. Scott Wells on Twitter. Here we go. Hive Live. After Duren is drafted, do you think every team between their and our pick will try to extort us by threatening to take Williams? Our center hole. That's what he says, our C hole. I should have. I was getting a little scared there.
You proof these at all, Doug?
I didn't proof. I'm sorry. You're right. This is
The worst
my bad.
kept secret in the
I forgot we're
NBA. Everybody knows about it.
Our C hole,
boy.
which is our center, our hole at the center position, is the worst kept secret in the NBA. Is it also a liability in this scenario?
So I would first say phrasing to R. Scott Wells.
Seal.
His Twitter handle is what is that, a font
gangsta?
So yeah, he doesn't have any problem putting that out there. I will say this, he's right. I mean, of course, everybody's going to try to gain leverage as much as possible in the draft in any sport, and he's also right that it is the worst kept secret in the NBA that the Hornets need a center. So there's going to be plenty of teams, and that goes back to the discussion. If Mark Williams is the only one on the board and you're there at 13, he's available, it's going to be really risky to trade to 15 because I'm sure there's other teams that like Mark Williams too. It's not going to be just the Hornets, especially after his measurements at the combine. And so if that happens, a team could jump the Hornets, get to 14. You got to take him. If that's your guy. If you don't like him, you don't believe in him, different discussion. But operating that they do, you got to take him at 13.
Here's why I don't think it's going to be like threatening. I don't think they'll have like super leverage over the Hornets because there are some wing defender options, and the Hornets could look at an Abaji. If Dyson Daniels were to fall, there are a couple options for the Hornets if some of these center prospects. Now, that's why you don't let that intel get out that like your team isn't particularly in love with a Williams or whoever. But I don't think it's a situation where they're going to. I hope Mitch Kupchak does again. Just from my experience, seeing them operate within the draft, just doesn't seem beholden to one objective, but can keep their options open for multiple objectives.
Well, yeah, that we're all operating under the assumption that they do want Mark Williams, right? But if they're cool with another wing
solo
defender,
workout,
yeah, no, he is. I mean, he is getting a solo workout.
That's a date. Yeah. That's a one-on-one date, not a group
Who's he
date.
going up against in the workout?
Maybe it's conspiracy.
Just a chair. Like who's he going? Do they have anyone in the building over
a broom that's getting held up by one of the assistant coaches? That's what he's going against.
Oh,
anything else, Doug?
Oh, I'm scrolling. Here we go. Miles just puts it out. If you have both players available, Jalen Duren or Mark Williams.
It's Jalen. We talked about trading up for him. He's the guy. It's funny because we have talked so much about Mark Williams, but as we've done in the past, you talk about the guy that makes the most sense where they're selecting, right? Like, clearly he's not better than even a Chet Holmgren, but we haven't talked at all about Chet Holmgren because they're not going to get him. They have to trade up and you'd have to give up a massive amount. I don't even know if you could still. So still Jalen though, like there's a possibility and Jalen would be the first pick for me.
Jimmy asks, why not consider Quinn Snyder for the coaching job?
He doesn't want it, I think would be the main drawback.
That's what makes it really tough. When someone doesn't want it, that's what makes it really tough. Quinn Snyder
I think they would love to.
Quinn Snyder was part of the coaching search when they hired Clifford and they passed on Snyder. So there might be some bad blood there.
Here's the thing. Hopefully third time's the charm on that because they've had guys that have gone on to have success within the searching pool and they would just name somebody different. So Quinn Snyder was in the pool that Steve Clifford eventually got hired from. Snyder, clearly a very good NBA head coach. Ime Udoka was a part of the candidacy that eventually saw James Borrego get that job. And obviously you see Ime Udoka, what he's doing right now with the Celtics.
One more here from EB Camp on the YouTube chat. By the way, thanks to everyone for watching us live. We go live every Friday. It's a good time. So if you subscribe and then turn your notifications on, you'll know exactly when we are going live. Here we go. Last one. With the Hawks having some cap problems to figure out this offseason, which players could you guys see the Hornets trading for?
What was the question again? Who was the team?
The Hawks having some cap problems. There will be some opportunities to trade for the Hornets because there are teams that may be struggling to make those moves. So who would you see the Hornets trading for from Atlanta? And I'm going to expand this question and say, overall, what are some trade targets?
I mean, when you go to Atlanta, I know Clint Capella has been talked about before. It's boring, but it's just the easiest route to take.
But reuniting Clint Capella with D'Antoni would be difficult because D'Antoni hit the eject button on Capella in Houston.
Yeah. He did. Capella, I mean, that's exactly right. And Daryl Morey traded him, and Capella had his moments, but then would get sat on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Bogdanovich down there, right? I mean,
they got one.
They got one of those. So
who the Hornets were reportedly in on when he was leaving the Kings. That was something that at least the Hornets were interested in then.
I don't know that.
I mean, it's going to be wing. It's going to be wing defenders and big guys. I mean, that's what they're going to be looking at first, right? So wherever you can find those guys, I think is who they're looking to add.
I have my top 4 center trade targets. If you want to hear them real quick.
Oh yes, rank radio, baby. It's been a while. Let's bring it back.
Here we go. Number 4, Rashawn Holmes.
Okay.
We got some news on Walker.
Yeah, we did. We did get news on Rashawn Holmes, and so those accusations hurled his way. They were not accurate as it would stand out, and so that's why you let the process play out, right?
Let me give you the news here from James Ham of ESPN 1320. A Los Angeles court awarded King center Rashawn Holmes sole physical and sole legal custody of his son. Holmes' ex-wife defied an LA court order and took the child to Georgia. Georgia court conferred with LA court and ruled in Rashawn's favor. Rashawn now has his son. So there was a custody battle, accusations thrown around about Rashawn Holmes. His ex-wife accused him of domestic violence toward their son. And that's where the situation stands. So anyway, number 4, Rashawn Holmes.
Okay,
Number 3.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, moving on.
Moving on. Number 3, Rudy Gobert.
Number 3.
Yeah, I'd flip those.
Okay.
You know, now that we have the info on Holmes, I'd flip those.
Sorry, I wrote this down wrong. Number 3, Christian Wood.
Okay.
Number 2.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. No more
DeAndre
analysis
Ayton.
in between. Go ahead.
Okay.
Be a sign and trade. He's a restricted free agent.
Sure.
Rudy Gobert, number 1.
All right, those are your rankings. Rudy, who was your second player? I didn't even hear who the second player was.
Well, the second ranked was Ayton.
Okay,
right,
DeAndre Ayton. Okay, that'll do
go.
it. We'll end on that, Doug. Did you want to get to any more comments or questions before we ended today?
No. David, what's wrong with the NBA?
Oh my God! How much time?
I know we can do it next Friday, but what's wrong? Just tease us.
Look, we
wrong?
all love the NBA. I just think they've got some major issues going on. What with former referees going on live broadcast saying they actually confirmed what we all thought, and they referee different players differently.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I was shocked.
Era. I don't like this fighting, this infighting, if you will, amongst the NBA alumni when you've got the new era / new media. Going back at the guys like Bob Cousy. I mean, when Bob Cousy's just sitting there in his house and a bomb.
I love it.
On him.
I love it.
It's not.
Hey, that's Mad Dog's fault, man.
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with anything that Cousy. Well, I don't necessarily.
Cousy?
I don't disagree totally with Cousy, but I just love the idea of Cousy coming out and throwing punches in defense of his area.
Oh, I'm liking that. Yeah, you get.
Well, you said you didn't like the infighting.
Well, he didn't start it. I'm just saying he got blindsided. And then I don't know. I don't think the finals and the playoffs have been exactly what they wanted to see from a TV viewership standpoint. So there's just a lot of like off court. Are we going to change the schedule? Are we not going to play 82 games? Are we playing 82 games? So there's just a lot of things they seem like they need to iron out from an image standpoint. But those are the things, I guess. Maybe it's just because there's not as many games going on right now, right? It's just the finals. A lot of flack, like a negative stuff flying around for me.
Lots of Draymond talk.
A lot of Draymond.
A lot of Draymond talk going on.
I support any podcaster. This is what we're doing.
We don't need that many podcasts.
But we need one from Draymond. In fact, if there was one player we needed a podcast from, Draymond would certainly be up there as far as the active players that are currently there right now. All right. Go ahead. You got something else, Doug?
Well, I was going to just real quick, LaMelo Ball, you think? Podcast at some point? What do you think? LaMelo Ball?
Be great. I would listen. And
I don't know. I don't know if he's a big conversationalist.
I mean, that's true.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Definitely more of a visual medium type of guy. But, video podcast perhaps, but we'll see.
Like if Tumblr was still around. Maybe just Instagram.
All right, Bob Cousy.
Just as long as he doesn't have a blog.
Yep. Yeah. Terry doesn't care about him. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter. He's joined by Richard Stamen. We're going to play the last segment for him on Monday, giving a name game, talking a little bit about the draft prospects. But Rafael Barlow is also joined by Sam Ferris and Leif Tulin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's free and available wherever you get your pods. Thanks again to David joining us as he does every single Friday. And thanks to you guys for joining us this Hive Live. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back with you on Monday.